Cool. So, hello everyone once again, and welcome to the n8n's monthly community meetup. And as always, we have some very exciting talks from our community members and the team as well. I am Harshil Agrawal, your host for this meetup. Now, before starting, let's go through some housekeeping rules so that we know what to expect during this meetup and how we can interact with each other. So the first thing is we are recording the meetup and we'll be sharing it later on YouTube. So if you are not comfortable, feel free to turn off your camera. And if you have any questions for any of our speakers, feel free to post them in the chat. I'll collect all these questions and ask them during the Q&A sections that we have. And lastly, be respectful and mindful of whatever you share during the meetup. So let's kick off today's meetup with the agenda. So first we have Max, who will be giving us the insights and talk about some exciting product updates. Then we have Ivan. Unfortunately, Ivan could not make it, so I will be taking his place, and I'll be helping you understand the data structure in n8n. And after that, we'll have a small break for Q&A, where you can ask any questions that you might have for our talks. And the next we have Jan from Common Knowledge, who will be talking about community groups and campaigns and the needs for inexpensive, simple, usable, and reliable automation tools like n8n. And the next we will be having Jason, who will help us understand how we can use Discord with n8n to get real-time notifications for our for our n8n workflows. And we got Vihar, a friend from AppSmith, who will talk about how you can build a customizable dashboard for your social media accounts with n8n and AppSmith. And we will wrap up the meetup with another round of Q&A and office hours. So keep your questions coming. I am going to make sure that I ask your questions to the speakers. So moving to our first talk, we have Max, who is the head of design at n8n. And Max might share some super exciting secret stuff. So over to you, Max.
Thanks a lot, Harshil, for that introduction. And thank you, everyone who's attending this. It's always humbling to see how many people want to hear this info, and so cool to see some familiar faces. Very exciting update. We've actually got a lot in the pipeline. I'm going to show some features. I'm going to discuss about some other things that we're working on right now. I'll share my screen to show you that first thing that we've readying to release. So what you're seeing here is we've got a new version notification functionality coming out. So right now in n8n, there's no real way to know how many versions you are behind, especially if there's maybe a critical update, a security update like that. So we've rolled out this feature, and what it does is, in a nutshell, it'll tell you when there's new features. What you're seeing right now is I just had a workflow open. I loaded this screen, and on the bottom right, we do have notifications when there is a critical update. So this is one that we've marked manually as something that's sort of mission critical, a security vulnerability, and that's the only time that we'll actually send you these notifications. Otherwise, on the bottom right here, you'll see there's this new little present icon here with the number of updates available. It's not always important to update to the latest version if you're one version behind, but when that number starts going up, you might want to take a look at what you're missing. So if I do click on the present icon here, it opens up this drawer here, and we can see right now, we're using some mock data here, but that we're 2 weeks behind right now and 4 versions behind. So maybe this is a good time to update. And then we can see here, we have all the sort of versions that we're behind from. For each version, we have a little write-up of what that includes, and then also the node icons. And we wanted to get that in there so you can quickly scan and see which updates are relevant to you. Of course, if there's a security update, it's relevant for all users, but you might be more interested in updating faster if you see that there's a node that you use a lot, that there might be some new functionality there. So again, it's not the biggest feature in the world, but we wanted to get this out because every week, pretty much n8n's releasing a new version, and there's always something interesting that we're working on, a bug fix, new nodes, core improvements. So this way you can kind of get to that faster. Clicking on any one of these would open up that version in our changelog. And there's also this link here, which we've updated our documentation to have this central hub, so you know how to update, depending on if you're on Docker, if you're on n8n Cloud, etc. If you are an n8n cloud, when this deploys, when you click on this button, it'll actually open up the admin panel and have an actual step-by-step quick tutorial on how to update that if you haven't done that before. So that's version notifications in a nutshell. It doesn't look like there's so much on this front end here, but moving forward, when you update, you don't have to actively sort of go in and go check that. Now, at the same time, by virtue of having this update functionality, this instance does have to ping an n8n server, and we know that some of our users are very privacy conscious or have a use case that requires total isolation. So we are shipping with an environment variable where you can turn this functionality off if you want to in no way ping sort of a central server to get that update information. So we did kind of think about our privacy conscious users there. So that's that feature. Coming up soon in the pipeline, we're basically sort of testing it and polishing a few things, is the much anticipated wait node. So I'm personally very excited about this. Right now in n8n, there hasn't been a very good waiting strategy. So you could pause for a minute with a function through a sleep node. But now with the wait node, you'll be able to do extended pauses, for example, a month, a year even. What it'll do is it'll take the workflow and record it and save it. And so when it's time to trigger that workflow again, sort of resuscitates that. So it's sort of a sophisticated, proper strategy on how to handle that. There will be 3 modes. One will be to wait a certain amount of time, a relative amount of time, a month, a day, an hour, that sort of thing. There'll be another mode to wait until a specific date and time, which obviously you could set programmatically when you do run an execution. And the third one that's very interesting is you'll be able to wait until a specific webhook endpoint is triggered. So that's going to be very useful. For example, if you have a workflow that maybe requires something external from that workflow to be finished, maybe it's some sort of status changing on a ticket, or perhaps it's actually a human step where someone has to check a button that some sort of process was approved. You'll be able now to model that by waiting for a webhook to be called, and then the workflow will resuscitate and continue. I think there's a lot of use cases that are going to be sort of possible with that. So really excited to see that get rolled out. That should be out very soon. What we also have, and to show a quick demo of this, we have now to the generic HTTP request node, we've added an option to split into items. So I can demonstrate this by, if I execute this right now, what we're doing in this workflow, in this endpoint, is we're simply returning an array of orders. As we can see here, here's the n8n payload for the node. This is our first item here. We have 1 item, and we have sort of an array within here of all these orders. The split into items option, which if this was removed, you could find here, split into items. When I check that to true and execute this, what now gets returned is anything that was in that top level as an array can get split into items. So we were seeing a lot of cases where so many users, for specifically this case, had to go get a function node, had to go write that. And so now we've added this option to kind of help, at least in these simple cases, so you don't have to go do that additional step. And so hopefully that's going to help a lot of our users who are using custom endpoints. Now, this is a small change to the HTTP request. For native nodes that you might want to do this sort of data transformation for, we do have an item list helper node coming out. So what this will do is it'll allow you to split a single item of data into multiple items. This is the biggest use case we're seeing, where people have to go to the function node, where maybe the function node's kind of overkill. They want a simple way to set it up in no code. So that's going to be coming out soon. It basically just has to go through the old review and polish cycle. I'm really excited about that because I think it's going to allow so many users to not have to reach for the function node if they don't want to. And that's going to be just the first of sort of a handful of data transformation nodes coming out. We'll either expand on a single node or add new ones, but generally what we're looking right now is at all the various ways that people use the function node. And when it comes to data transformation, picking up as sort of abstract cases and things that they tend to be doing a lot, so that we can have a node for that so you don't have to reach for a function node. Other than that, in parallel, the team's getting bigger, so it's very nice that we can work on things in parallel, but we are diligently working on user management. As I've said before, we've sort of split that up into milestones so we can release an MVP, give value to our users, and add to that. So that's very much in progress right now. In the next weeks, I'll be able to update you on that progress as well. So that's the product update. Thanks to everyone in the team that got to do all this amazing stuff. And of course, our community for helping guide us and submit PRs. We really appreciate it. Thanks.
Right. For the next one, our host will present a topic on data structure in n8n. So Harshil, please take it away.
All right. So today I'm going to talk about data structures. I think you might go. Okay, I think it's good now. All right. So today I'm going to talk about data structures in n8n. I know this is a bit more technical topic, but I'm going to try my best to explain and go through a bit slowly and try to cover everything so that you understand how the data structure in n8n works, when you might need to, use of the function node to transform data from one structure to another. So let's get started and take an overview of how it looks. So this is whenever you make a request via HTTP, via the HTTP request node, or you are getting some data from another API. This is the top level structure that that you will get. So let's just break it down into small parts. So first of all, if you see there is a orange box that is called items. So that's the whole array that uh, Max showed us earlier, right? And in this particular items box, we have smaller boxes which are each individual item, right? I am gonna go through an example to show you the difference over here. But yeah, but so moving forward, now each of this item can have a box within itself which contains the value JSON, and now each JSON can have another box within itself which contains different values. So these values can be your actual data. So something like the order ID, the name of the particular order, the price, and everything like that. So moving forward, so this is how the overall your data might look like. So again, there is a box which is an items, and each of this box contains different boxes which we call as JSON objects. And then in this JSON objects, there are another boxes which actually contain your data. So over here, you can see that our actual data is the name, the age, and the role. So this is how the overall structure looks like in n8n. Now moving forward over here, this is a screenshot of one of the nodes. So if you execute the node, you get a list of items in here. Now if you see, we have on the nodes, we specify the total number of items that get returned. And each of this row is an individual item. So you can see that the total number of items here is 5, and each of these rows is an individual item. Now let's take a look at how it actually looks under the hood in n8n. So for this, I have taken an example of the function node because we oftentimes use the function node for data transformation. So the important thing to note over here is that you can see that there is the JSON key for each and every item in here. Now this is the actual code that you write, but this is the value that n8n displays you. So n8n does not show you the JSON key. It only gives you the required data. So sometimes I have seen a lot of users get confused. And this is why I wanted to specify this particular thing, that we don't extract the JSON object. We don't display it to you, but it under the hood, this is how it looks like. So again, coming back to and taking a full picture over here, we have an items box which contains individual smaller boxes which are JSON objects, and these JSON objects, they contain your actual data. Now this data can have any kind of structure. It can be another object or it can be an array. So now let's take a look at it. Again, I'm gonna steal Max's example over here, and I'm gonna go through the same example. So I'm gonna execute the node, and it is gonna return the same data that Max showed us. But over here, if you see, it says only one item, but we have a lot of different orders in here. Now this is because if I close this, we have the main array, sorry, the main box, which was in the orange box, and then this is and there is just one single box in here. So the orange box, and there is just one box, and that is why for n8n, this is only one item. But if we split it into items, and if I execute this now, what it will do is it will now uh, get those items from the inner item box, and then give us the JSON body. So if you see over here now, we have the items as 30, and now we have each of these individual items. So this was the items and why you should care about it. So one of the reasons is oftentimes we get all these values and we want to, do some process on each of these values. But if you don't have the values coming in as as the n8n data structure, only the first item in that value gets processed, and you then have to you maybe loop around it and figure out a way of how you can process this all the items. So if you convert your incoming request into the n8n data structure, you don't have to create any sort of loop. So n8n then handles it for you. So let's take a quick look over here. So I'm just going to use the set node for now. And I'm going to set a value over here. Let's just get the employee name. Right. Now, another important thing to note over here is we just show the first value over here, but we are going to process all the incoming data. So if I execute this node, you see that we are getting the value for all the incoming data and not only just the first item. Now this is again because we are following the n8n data structure. But what happens when we don't do that? So let's turn this off, execute the node. Now remember, we are now just getting only one item. So I have to go ahead and change the expression in here. So you see now that each of this becomes an array, and we are only able to specify one particular value. So now if I execute this node, it only gives me the first value. So this is where you really, this is where transforming your data into the data structure that n8n follow is really helpful when you want to process all the information for each of these incoming items. Now, since we are talking about transformation, let's take a look at how you can do it. So to access the data, since n8n uses JavaScript under the hood, we are using JavaScript. We are using JavaScript notations to access the data. So again, items is the whole box. So we are telling, hey, we need something from the items. Okay, cool. But what do you need now? So we need the first value from the items. So if you are familiar with arrays in JavaScript, the first value always is indexed with 0. So because I want the first object, I am telling I want the first object from items. And then what exactly do I want? So I want this particular JSON object, and that's why I then specify .json. So what this will return is this will return the whole JSON object, which is the name, the age, and the role. But if I want to, let's just say, get the second item, right? So over then I have to specify items and then change the index value over here, and then again get JSON. What happens when we want to, get a specific value? Let's just say that's the name. So in that case, what we do is we just, after JSON, we again use a dot notation. So this becomes .json .name. So now it will only return us the name, and it won't give us the age and the role. So now let's take a look at how it looks like from a third-party API and how it looks like in n8n. So whenever you make a request on the third-party for the third-party API, maybe using a tool like Postman, right? You might get the data in this format. But for n8n, this is how it looks under the hood, right? And if you see over here, we have the results array, and we want to just get the results, right? We don't want the count or the errors. We want the actual result so that we can process it further. So for that, what we do is we use the map function of JavaScript to and extract those values. So what will happen over here is it will go through the results array, map through those values, and give you only this particular object. And then you can connect another node and then process all that information. Moving forward to the next example, sometimes you might want to combine all these values together, and this is where this example is really useful to understand. So let's just say we now have different values in here, right? We have a JSON object which contains name John, a JSON object which contains a name Mary, and now we want to combine them and get it into one single object, JSON object. So that's where this kind of code snippet is really helpful. So what it does is it goes through all these items and it gets those values and it then uses the join operation to join them. So this is how it would look like. So in the end, my message would be uh, John, Mary, and someone whose name starts with P, right? So something like that. So this was a small overview of data structure in n8n. If you have any questions, I would love to address them. So feel free to post your questions in the chat. And just to take a quick summary of what we talked about. So we talked about that if your incoming data is following the data structure of n8n, your data will travel from node to node, and it's called items. And inside the list, each item contains an object. We saw the inner box that has the JSON. And inside the object, again, it is the key JSON. And sometimes if you're working with files, the key might change from JSON to binary. And if you want to transform your data, there are essentially 3 steps that you should take care of. Is to first recognize which is the incoming data structure. So is it just an array within an array, or is it just an array that contains all those JSON items? The next is to extract with the expressions. So something like item0.json and then that particular value. And the last is to return it into the compliant data structure using the JavaScript methods that I talked about earlier. We already have a code snippet documented, which contains all the most common code snippets that you might that you might need. So you can always head over to our documentation, and it's under the reference section. And again, if you are facing any kind of problem, or if you have more questions around transforming your data, you can always ask us the questions on our community forum. So that's it. Thank you. And I am going to stop sharing my screen. All right. So we are going to now move ahead and start the Q&A session. So if you have any questions, just share it in the chat and we will get them. We'll get to them. Okay, I am seeing a couple of questions, so I am going to start addressing them. Okay, all right. So I see a question that is asking, can the JSON object be nested? Yeah, so a JSON object can have another JSON object within it, and it can be, a nested object. So that is possible. But again, to reference that, if you just want to, reference to that specific JSON value, you have to then reference it using the dot notation or the square notation. Okay. Will the slides be posted somewhere for us to download? So Paul, we would be sharing the recording of the talk on our YouTube channel. So you can just subscribe to our YouTube channel and get notified whenever we share it. Can you talk a bit about the transformation of the JSON to binary? Sure. If you want to transform something from JSON to binary, we already have a core node for that, and it's called move binary data. So you can, using that node, you can convert your data from binary to JSON or JSON to binary. So I would suggest you to use that node instead of hard coding that. I really like this question. What is the font used in the diagrams? Honestly, I am not too sure. I am using this tool that's called Excel Draw, and I'm using the fonts that they have. Another question I see is, can you have both JSON and binary? Yeah, so you can have both JSON and binary. It depends on how what kind of data the API is sending. So let's just say you are making a request to Airtable and you have a binary file somewhere in Airtable. It can be maybe an image, right? And you are getting that image. So it would contain the JSON object as well as the binary object too. I think I have addressed all the questions. I'm not sure. If I've missed your questions, just please share it in the chat once again, and I'll get back to it. Yeah, okay. I see. CY has one more question. Sure, CY. While you are sharing that, Max, will there be any kind of node or something which would, extract this tab where we don't have to uh, code and maybe, transform it using a node?
So could you clarify that last bit? Extract what, sorry?
Yeah, okay, cool. So maybe we don't write JavaScript and we have a native node in n8n that does the transformation for us. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yes. So the plan here is the way we see it is we don't want to have a monolithic transform node because in terms of UX, there's lots of different things that you might want to transform. So the first node that will be coming out is, I would say, the first of our data transformation nodes, and that's going to, like, the biggest case that we've seen is turn sort of a single item into multiple items. But what we will be doing is holistically, and actually n8n Cloud's a really good kind of data point for us on this, is studying all the different ways that users are transforming data with the transform node or with the function item node, and extracting from that these kind of abstract things that people are doing. So item to items is one. There's a long tail of other things that we sort of got a finger around the pulse and seeing, okay, people are starting to do this. And basically that'll be a typical product management exercise of just prioritizing what are we seeing the majority of people using and doing that could be done very simply with a node. So I expect once this node is out, again, we wanted to, we're a startup, we're thinking lean, we wanted to get this out because this is going to save a lot of pain for a lot of users. But this, the book won't be closing, so it won't be done. We're going to continue studying and seeing what are you guys, doing with the function node, function item node, and like how can we model that as either a mode of one of these existing transform nodes or a brand new node. So I would say watch that space. Again, item to items is going to be the first thing that rolls out. But I think obviously for an app like n8n, transforming data is pretty valuable. The easier we can make that, the more utility our app can provide, also for a larger audience of people. So I would say strategically, we're definitely focusing and looking on how we can add nodes beyond that one that we'll be releasing. So the TLDR is yes, we will have more nodes that can do that.
Awesome, that's really exciting. Cool. And I see another question from Siva that Mani already answered, but let me address that as well. So we can access JSON objects silently differently in different languages. That's true. So how can we take care of that? For example, in Python, we have native dictionaries. Okay. I think that this depends on how your object is in, like, what is the structure of the incoming data, right? Because even if you are using, I don't know, like Python, it's still, giving you, you are creating an API and you are giving us the information via the API, right? So I think it's kind of then again following the JavaScript standards over there to extract those values. So yeah, that's what I would say, and that's what I think it's the way to move forward with, again, because you are not coding in Python with n8n, you are coding with JavaScript. All right, so moving forward to our next talk, we have Vihar Kumara, who is a developer and a writer and a creator working with the growth team at AppSmith as an engineer and a developer advocate. And in this talk, he will share a customizable dashboard where you can create, schedule, and manage all your social accounts within minutes using n8n and AppSmith. Over to you, Vihar.
All right. Thanks for the introduction, Harshil. Thanks for having us here. Now, let me share my screen. I have a quick presentation. All right. You guys can see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So this is a small talk. I'm gonna share you a super cool app that I regularly use. So this I call this as a social broadcaster, and I've built this using AppSmith and n8n. So moving on, I'm going to share you the motivation behind building this. So all right. So why I have built this? So usually I deal with a lot of social platforms every day, and I feel managing content is really hard. We'll always have to log into Twitter, LinkedIn, Discord, Slack, and then cross post content across all these platforms. So I felt it's a hard problem for everyone. And say if at all we have a customizable dashboard where we could manage all the content, that could be super helpful for all the users. And then again, building an app from scratch using JavaScript frameworks is hard. And then I thought I could utilize n8n and AppSmith to build this application myself. uh, there are two advantages of this. So it took me just 10 minutes to build this app, and both AppSmith and n8n are completely free and open source. With that being said, let me give you a quick intro of what AppSmith is. All right. So AppSmith is an low-code platform that will help you build internal tools 10x faster. So this is a quick infographic of how AppSmith works. So first you have AppSmith connects to any data source. Currently there are 10 data sources you can connect. You can connect to Postgres, you can connect to Mongo, either of these, any of the available data sources. And then you can query all the data using JavaScript. You can write custom logics, and then you can literally do anything, literally clone any application using this JavaScript. And then you can instantly publish your apps and then deploy it within a single click. All right. So I'll quickly go through how I've built this app using AppSmith and n8n. Uh, cool. So this is how my UI looks like. So this is, so I'm currently using the AppSmith cloud version. As you can see, you have the widget section, and then you have the data source section. So first, you can choose whatever widgets you want on your app, and then quickly drag and drop it here. So, I had dropped a few widgets here. So this is a basic text widget, and if you open it, if you click on this, you can see a property pane here, and then you have your input widget. And then just for customization sake, I have used 4 switch widgets here. So my idea is you write once, and then you publish to all the short social platform within a single click. So this is the basic UI. It took me less than 5 minutes to build this on AppSmith. And then coming back to n8n, so I am using the cloud version of n8n. So this is how my workflow looks like. And then I'm using a webhook, which connects to app, which I can access with AppSmith, and then send data through all these platforms. As you can see, this is a simple if node that I've used on n8n. So this basically communicates with the switch widget on the AppSmith. All right. And then configuring nodes on n8n is super easy. All you need to do is just add link, authorize with your social platform. And then this literally took me like 5 minutes to build this. All right. That being said, so I'm going to quickly show you how I'm connecting the webhook onto AppSmith. So on n8n, I've just copied my URL, the test URL here, and then on AppSmith, I've used an API. So this is my webhook URL. And then in the body, I'm sending all the information from my widgets. As you can see, this is the input text that I'm taking from the input widget from AppSmith. And these are all the conditions from which, I can share all my content onto different social platforms. It's that simple. And if you can also see here on the evaluated type, it says content as undefined, since I do not have any text there. And then medium, since nothing is selected, I have everything evaluated here. All right. So that being said, I'll quickly post something to the selected social platforms. Cool. So I'm gonna execute my workflow here, and then now it waits for the webhook call. Right, let me hide this. Cool. All right. Now I'm gonna say uh, AppSmith and n8n are awesome. And then I'm gonna select Slack, Discord, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So these four are now connected to my personal social accounts, and then within single click, there you go, everything is done. So if you go to my Twitter, let me refresh this. Okay, just cool. So on my Discord, I can see my message. On Slack, I can see my message. On LinkedIn, let me refresh my page. All right, I think I'll have to reauthorize it because I've tested this a while ago. Let me do it quickly. All right, so sorry, I have paused these two things. So what I'll do is I'll execute the workflow again, and this time I'm gonna select only Twitter and LinkedIn. So I'm just disabling this thing. Post now. Let me go back, refresh, and there you go. So within single click, you can manage everything, all your social platforms. So I felt this interesting, and then thought of sharing this with you in this talk. Being said that, we also did a demo last week. So we also have conference on the talk. He'll be posting you that link where we have built the entire TweetDeck clone using AppSmith and n8n. Feel free to go through that and experiment with stuff things. All right, over to you, Harshil.
Oh, that was awesome. Thank you for sharing this. And I already got a sneak peek of it before, so I am really excited to build something of my own and try it out and build a SaaS project, a SaaS product out of it. So yeah, once again, thank you for this. So moving on to our next talk, we have Jan. Jan is a research and a software engineer at Common Knowledge, and in this talk, he will talk about using automation for community group and campaigns. So over to you, Jan.
Hey guys, how's it going? Hey, I recognize some of you. Yeah, so what can I say? We've maybe I'll intro myself and Common Knowledge real quick, and then we'll talk about the kind of work that we've been doing and how n8n has very nicely fitted into our workflow with our collaborators. So Common Knowledge is a worker cooperative. We've been going for about 2 years. We're a collection of researchers, engineers, designers, and political activists and organizers. And we work with community groups, especially unfunded community groups or kind of charitably funded groups, to basically address what they're, whatever they're dealing with, specifically around campaigns or with dealing with like large groups of volunteers and things like that. So the work that characterizes their kind of mission is around kind of like big database operations, syncing lots of different tools that are easily accessible to volunteers or part-time staff, and kind of making the best of what they can to kind of basically bring people together and get stuff done. So they're not normally big operations. They don't normally have much funding or particularly long-term, well-trained staff either. And we do what we can to kind of make sure that they're doing the best that they can with the full gamut of digital technologies. And in the course of this work, since where we fit in is that we're startup engineers historically, or researchers. We worked in agencies as well, and we noticed that all these folk had lots of kind of problems to solve, and were doing the best they had, but had very little really awareness of what they could be using to solve these problems. A lot of these issues always ended up with one technical guy who in their spare time fiddles around with a bunch of scripts. Maybe we've seen horrible, like really terrifying examples of like Google app scripts with like lost passwords, or a Zapier account that ends up with like half the organization's like budget or something like that, and everything in between. A lot of like kind of hamster wheeling as well. Lots of like manual stuff for that could take days of someone's time for things that could take a couple of minutes with a well-designed little pipeline or workflow. So we stepped into that. We've been looking at products, but we've also been basically trying to help them wire up their organizational processes. And we've learned a lot through it. So I'll quickly share my screen because it's boring to see my face. I'll just share my whole screen. Hopefully you can see that. Yeah, so it's a bit about us and some of the people we worked at, if you want to have a look afterwards. And what we were doing recently was looking at specifically the issue of automations and pipelines. And because through that, we ended up finding n8n. We've looked at loads of different pipeline tools, very kind of high tech, kind of engineer-oriented ones like Stackstorm or whatever it's called. Zapier comes to mind. But we ended up landing on n8n for a couple of specific reasons that we put into a blog, and the n8n team have very kindly reposted to their own blog. The things that really drew us were it doesn't cost much. It's always competitive compared to Zapier, but more importantly, you can build your own stuff on top of it fairly easily, and it's still quite usable. Crucially, you can kind of host your own kind of version of it, and that was a really important thing for us while we were dealing with quite a security conscious group called United Voices of the World, which is a labour union in London. It deals with with workers who work in the kind of care or cleaning sector. They often work in like big newspapers and stuff like that, or in one case the royal parks, and they were dealing with like a particularly kind of security conscious project that required them to think about how their data was being piped around the internet. So we suggested that they set up an n8n instance. This is the first time we were able to suggest anything like this, because of course you can't run your own Zapier, you can't easily kind of onboard people onto a lot of the other technical tools for this kind of job that you can self-host. And I can't show you the pipelines that they've run, but basically we found that when we showed people a screenshot of like, or a kind of screen share of like a workflow, and kind of like walked them through it, we could even like design stuff with them. The idea of like kind of just having stuff in a diagram kind of workflow kind of clicked in people's minds that like this was, oh yeah, this is like a thing that I can see how this works, compared to what they previously had, which was, as I said, some guy who every once in a while from 4 time zones away might update a Google Sheet or the script that corresponds to it. So that's been really helpful to us. And even though we've not had integrations up until recently for other tools that activists use, like Action Network or Nation Builder, these kind of CRM tools, the HTTP request node, and we've also built our own custom nodes, have been really, really helpful. One thing we noticed with Zapier is that you really have to have a certain kind of threshold of kind of relevance to kind of the wider world to kind of have your tools integrate with a tool like this. Whereas we've been able to take quite a niche, relatively niche kind of problem area, and develop a few best practices or a few kind of like common like nodes for those kind of for the tools that work in that ecosystem. And we've begun to get people together who are also enthusiastic about it, so that they can set up these systems for their own. So a couple of unions are trialing it at the moment. A couple of political organizations in the UK are trialing it. And we've been able to, in the process, move away from some of the more like custom tech that we would otherwise have to use, and basically take some off the shelf stuff like a Airtable, for example, and just use some like simple n8n scripts to kind of almost like mimic what we would otherwise be probably building as a silly Heroku app or something with some endpoints. And that's been really exciting. In the process, like it's kind of helped us think about the rest of the open source stack. So we're kind of putting together a little wiki of like all these different options you can pick for different kinds of systems. So things like help desk systems or forums or leaks and stuff. And we're particularly looking at stuff that has like a good, clean API interface that we could then articulate through n8n. And being able to kind of say that the integrations part of that whole kind of stack is also part of the open source system. You could do the same thing as you do with all these other things, run out on your own, VPS, have some governance around it, some rules, has been a real kind of like revolution for us. That's really cool. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe I can stop. I can talk more into particular details, but that's a tiny bit about common knowledge for co-op. We're really into open source. The fact that it's a kind of code-free, free code tool is awesome for us. It means that we have a bit of confidence in pointing the kind of progressive community to this progressive activist community to this kind of tool, because there's no fear that it's going to disappear, or that all their hard work is going to suddenly not be possible to kind of extend. So yeah, I mean, thank you to the team for building a great platform, and for being very, very accessible and very, very friendly. I'll pass it back to you, I guess, Harshil.
Awesome. Thank you, Jan, for the talk. It was really insightful, and thank you, for sharing your use cases and talking us and sharing more about why you selected n8n and just giving us an insight into it. Now, joining us from Canada and continuing the tradition of Hawaiian T-shirt Friday. I hope he's wearing an Hawaiian T-shirt today. We have Jason. So Jason will show us how we can monitor our workflows and use Discord to get timely notifications. Jason, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Harshil. And yes, it is Friday. Thank you very much for letting me speak again today. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about a challenge that I ran into and how I've been using n8n to kind of get past some of those issues and see what is really going on behind the scenes sometimes with some of my workflows. So quite often I would find out, often when a client would tell me or when it was too late, that something wasn't working right with one of my workflows, something was causing errors, so on and so forth. And so I started investigating a little bit about, well, how can I be more aware of what's going on? How can I get errors to pop up? How can I send event logs somewhere so that I can see them more easily? And it was actually some of the stuff that Harshil was doing with some of the Discord stuff that kind of made two and two come together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to show you a few workflows actually that I've put together, and we'll let you see just some of the stuff that I'm working on. So I'm assuming you can see my screen. And what we've got here is I've got the familiar n8n screen interface, and I've got Discord that I've set up. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about how I've all done this. I actually have created a blog post on how this all works, and I'll put that into the chat later on. And this gives you a step-by-step on how to build this out for yourself if you find it useful. But essentially what I've done is I've created two separate workflows. One I use for sending out event logs, and the other one I use for sending error logs. And I've created two different channels in the Discord app. And in each of the channels, I've created webhook integrations. So I can take those webhook integrations and I can, in my n8n instance, give them that webhook URL and then send text to it. So this is some of the stuff that Harshil's been showing us. So I kind of decided, well, I'm going to take the information that we're getting and push it through whenever something happens, like an error or I want an event log. So this is it. That's all there is to it. There's really a Discord node, and I've got a testing node just for checking some stuff out. And what I do is I will call this. So I've got a test node here that I use. My error testing node. So what I will do is I can actually call that event log workflow. And the reason I created it as a separate workflow is so that I can call it from multiple different places. And that will fire off an event log for me. Similarly, I've also created I will grab the error log node. And again, I got some sample testing information, but really this is the important part right here. And it does the same thing. When it sees an error on a workflow that is set up for it, and I'll show you how to set that up in a second, it will fire a bit of information off to Discord as well. So when I will run my error test as an example, you'll note that in here, I have to make a change. So in the settings, I need to put in the error log. I'm not sure why it's spinning. There it is. The error log as my error workflow. So anytime that there's an error now in this workflow, it will fire to my error log in Discord. So I'm actually going to activate this, and this will take maybe a minute or so. And what it's going to do is it'll fire, because I've got the cron node, it'll fire every minute. And when it does, it'll do two things. It's going to set up my event log parameters and then send a message to the event log. And then it's going to fire this function node, which I've actually designed to fail. So it will cause an error. And when that error occurs, that will then get automatically pushed to the error log. And there we go. And it will send that into Discord. So I'm just going to turn this off, because if I leave it on, it'll keep sending one every minute. So as you'll see, I got the base information going into the event log. The title I can easily modify. The message I can easily modify. All of this information in here, it actually automatically grabs from variables that are pushed to it from the event log set node. So all of this, you don't have to change it. It'll just grab it and send it out. Similarly, here's the error log, and it goes right into detail as to what node caused the node type that caused the problem, what part of it is the issue. Here's the values of the keys. Here's the name of the error, the message that was sent, the stack error, and then it even gives you a URL link so that when you click on it, it will fire up the actual execution that caused the error within n8n. And then we go, oh, right there, there's where the error is, and you can go in and look at it. So it's very quick and easy to be able to dig up all this this information, and you're aware of it right in real time. You can even have the client running on your phone, and it works just fantastically. So you can get a message, you're on the road, you can check what's going on and get it resolved, rather than having your client tell you that it hasn't been running for the last 2 weeks. I think I saw a question here earlier. Somebody was asking, is there a particular reason that I'm using Discord? Yeah, first of all, Harshil's my hero. I wanted to be just like Harshil, so I decided to use Discord because of all of his stuff. The other nice thing about Discord is that there's no cost associated with it. You can create your own Discord server, and it doesn't cost you anything, and it's super easy to program with n8n. A single node, and away it goes. So it takes seconds to do that type of stuff. See what else. Any other questions? What kind of data are you data you think are really important for event logs? Can you share some light on this? So there is really, I use event logs for something that would be critical. So if I'm going to be, for example, sending data over to another system, and I want to make sure that we reach that point, I'll put in an event log saying, yep, this data has been sent over to this other system, into Airtable or what have you, and it'll allow me to go in and see what's going on from that perspective. I'll often do things when, let's say, for example, it's something that doesn't happen very often, and we want to be notified of it. So, for example, if I have a flow that will turn lights on, and it doesn't usually turn lights on, or maybe even, let's say, it's a motion sensor outside. That's a great one to send into your event log, because the light comes on, well, somebody's out there. You get to see it, and it sends you that alert right away. And again, anything that you would look at digging in and finding out just how things are working, just to make sure they are. And sometimes, when you get no message, that's good news. Sometimes when you get no message, it's bad news. So you want to make sure that you can see that as well. For those of you who are interested in learning a little bit more about this, here is the blog post. I'm just going to plug it right into the chat, and you can go and take a look at it. All the codes there, everything that you need, you should be able to figure it all out from there. If not, you know where to find me. Be more than happy to give you a hand. And Harshil, I think it's back over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. That was really wonderful and very helpful. And I'm looking forward to, implement this for my own workflows as well from now. So that was really a good practice that I think I am going to follow for now. So once again, thank you everyone who joined in, and thank you to all our speakers for taking out some time and sharing their knowledge with the community. We are now moving towards the end of our meetup, and we'll start with our office hours, where you can ask questions to our speakers or to the team. Now, if you have any questions, once again, just share it in the chat, and I will ask them for you. So yeah, looking forward to all the incoming questions. All right. So in the meantime, we get some questions coming in. Jason, I was curious to know, if you could share some insights on, when this kind of thing is really helpful, to get an event log. Maybe share one or two of your experience.
So quite often I've used event logs in my former lives where I was running like IT infrastructure and so on. If you're monitoring a lot of different systems, often you'll find that, there could be some signs of things that are happening ahead of time before you get a failure, and you can prevent them from happening if you get them sooner. So for example, if your server, let's say, runs at typically like a 40 or 50% capacity, and then all of a sudden it's running now for like 2 days at 80 or 90% capacity, there could be a bug, there could be a memory leak, there could be a virus on the system, there could be all kinds of things going on that would, cause that. And to know that early on, so you can go in and take a look at it before it actually causes more problems, that's definitely worth doing. Again, anything that you really feel is something that you want to know about that's running on the system, or like we say, like alarms are great. If you have motion sensors, those work really good. If you're looking at some of the workflows that you're working with, I do stuff where I do a lot of forms that people will fill out. It's kind of nice for me to see, oh, hey, somebody filled out this form. You should have new data in your system. It's kind of nice to kind of get that alert going. Oh, okay. So, I should go and check that out. So if you want to be able to respond quickly, it would be great for like a call center. If people are trying to, they have to reach out for tech support. And this way you can get the alerts that a ticket has been submitted, and you can go and let them know that. So it just speeds up some of your processes. There's thousands and thousands of different ways of using the event logs.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And we have one question that maybe Max, you can answer that. So we have a question for where do you stand the ability for a self-hosted to have multiple users with own n8n credentials and workflows?
Sorry, Harshil, you cut off there a little bit in the middle of that question. If you could repeat that, please.
All right. So where do you stand with the ability for the self-hosted version to have multiple users with own n8n credentials and workflows?
Sure thing. So we are currently actively working on user management functionality in n8n. I would say strategically, this is sort of the big feature that we're working on this quarter. The design work's done. We're sort of putting, I guess, keystrokes to files and coding it out. So the MVP of that feature will allow multiple users to have accounts on an instance, to log in, to create their own workflows and credentials, and in the MVP, the minimum viable product, to be able to optionally share those workflows with other users and also for credentials as well. And so the way that will work is sort of I would say a Google Drive style sharing, where you can share at the workflow level a workflow with one-to-many users and set them a role. And then for the MVP and credentials, there will be the ability to share the credential itself. But so those users will be able to use that credential, but not be exposed to its keys and private data and whatnot. So that's going to be getting rolled out to all users. And then from there, we're going to establish a roadmap for user management where we'll add things like groups, various things like 2FA and all these other kind of features that people have been requesting. But so that we're not blocking that feature from being released, we're going to be sort of prioritizing this minimum viable product of user management that will get rolled out. And that should really satisfy all the sort of pain points about saying, do I have to roll my own Kubernetes cluster and set this all up? No, we are working on that. So in combination with user management, right, it's already possible to sort of have a horizontally scaling workers with a Redis database. So I would say when user management does come out, for those users who want to self-host and have a performant instance that can handle a lot of workflows, the combination of setting up n8n with sort of that horizontal scaling of workers and user management is going to be the ticket there. From there, of course, like I said, we'll have a roadmap and we'll keep releasing features to user management. So things like groups and whatnot will come. And I don't have an estimate on that, but as I said, the design work there is done and we're actively coding it out. It's a non-trivial feature. Part of what we'll be doing as we're doing this is assessing if there's any tech debt for anything to refactor as we're touching it. So we're kind of going to do it right first time around to release that. But what I can say is this is like the big strategic priority for us this quarter. We've got a lot of engineering resources focused on it. So we've got some smart brains working on the case, and that should be out sooner than later.
Awesome. Awesome. So I am really excited, and I think a lot of people are excited as well. The next question is for Jan. So Jan, Max asked, it would be great to know if there is a new feature that would be most helpful for activists.
Features for activists. I mean, to be honest, a lot of it is around the user management stuff. The way we're thinking about it is about autonomy in your kind of workflow management. So instead of having to have someone who's who is responsible to your technical needs, you have a bit of like self-serve in there. But that doesn't necessarily. The problem for us is that it has to also articulate with sometimes quite strange, weird systems or kind of bizarre configurations of Google Sheets and like weird, non-standard kind of tooling setups. So firstly, that kind of user management stuff, which is coming down the road, which is super exciting. And perhaps after that, I guess it's about the kind of visibility of stuff. So beyond editing, one thing that we've pushed a tiny bit on the forum, and we're still looking at other tools that could do this, is visibility over workflows that can be visible to like quite a large non-technical group of people. Say, especially in coronavirus times, a lot of automations kind of run organizational functions. So say membership, signups, or like newsletters and responses, or weird like notifications here and there. If those fail, that's, in a business that would be possibly someone's responsibility. And there are tools that do that kind of stuff, like monitoring workflows as though that's part of someone's job. That kind of same visibility stuff is important for us, but we also wonder how that can be almost more democratically accountable, I guess, so you can make sure that always happens. Some stuff.
Awesome, thank you for sharing that. And there is another question. Anyone has any suggestions to work with external API limits on n8n? So assuming that's what the rate limit node would help with. especially when working with Google Sheet or YouTube or Calendar API limits. Okay, I am gonna take this. So if you're using a node for Google Sheets or YouTube or Calendar, we already manage the rate limit for that. So you don't have to worry about that. But if you're using any API which has sort of a rate limit, the general practice over here is to, make that HTTP call, get that response. And in that response, mostly the APIs that I have worked with, they also give you the limits, like how many calls you have consumed and how many calls are left. So based on that, then you can structure the logic and maybe using the wait node, wait for a few seconds and then make another HTTP call to the next page. So that's how you can work with the external APIs limits on n8n.
Yeah, just to add to that, what I can actually do, since I had n8n open from the demo, is just quickly contextualize what Harshil was saying. So in principle, what's going to happen if a HTTP request, really any node, returns a 404 or some sort of error, the workflow will stop by default. What you can do is in the settings of any node, you can check this continue on fail. So now we don't treat that 503, 404, whatever it might be as an error. We treat that as a payload response. We treat that as a workflow executing. So what you could do in that case, you would get an if node. And then if you know that the rate limit is a particular type of error, you'd use the if node to check if the payload of that data was an error. And if it was, at the moment, you could use a function node and write a simple sleep function there. Maybe it's 1,000 milliseconds, maybe it's a minute, and then sort of route back, etc. With the wait node, that'll be a bit simpler. Now, this is obviously a very high-level example. You might have to do a bit more manipulation of the data first before you send it back or something like that. But that would be sort of the home-rolled strategy for that. And then what Harshil was talking about before that is we do have a retry and fail, which is sort of a more simpler version where you could check this. You could check how many retries you want to do, and then check how long you want to wait between retries in milliseconds. So that's kind of the two strategies for thinking about how to do retry logic with rate limiting. And then a third thing there also, if the rate limit is simply based on just too many items, another strategy would be to use the split in batches node. And what you could do there is set a batch size, run your function. Let's say maybe HubSpot has a rate limit. You would set up your HubSpot node. We would then maybe with the function node, or when the wait node comes out, the function node, maybe you're having a quick sleep function, has 1,000 millisecond delay or something. You could follow patterns such as this. If you don't know how to write a sleep function, if you go to n8n.io in our workflow section, I believe by searching for sleep, you'll find a workflow there. If memory serves me correctly, that was even contributed by Teflon, Jason from our community. So thanks for that, Jason. Back to you, Harshil.
Awesome. And a question on top of that is, batches is like a task queue. So what batches does is batches would break your items. So let's just say you have 50 items coming in, and you use the split in batches node to create a batch of 10 items. So what it would do then is it would first get the first 10 items, do the process. Once that process is complete, it batches the next 10 items, again do the process, and this is how it's going to simply break the incoming items into batches and then move it forward to n8n. I hope that answers your question. Moving forward to the next one is, Tanay, I would like you to answer this. Are there any courses or books to master n8n code nodes?
Okay, so for courses, actually, this was one of the things that we were working in the last quarter. I'm going to drop a link here. This is something we actually pushed to production in the docs today. So we added one course on, it's sort of a beginner's course. And yeah, like you could go through a case study that we added and learn about the concepts of n8n. And over this quarter, we are also planning to work on more advanced levels. So we're going to cover the core nodes in details throughout these courses. So I would say that would be a good start. And since this is a new course, if you go through it, if you find that something isn't covered in too much detail, or something is confusing, something that you'd like us to add, please feel free to share your feedback in the community or Discord. Would love to learn that what you'd like to see here as well. But more courses incoming as well. Stay tuned on our social channels and community. We'll announce there as well. Regarding books, so Jason and I are working on a book on n8n where we are going to teach you how to build APIs, products with n8n. While it specifically doesn't specifically cover core nodes, but we do a lot of things with core nodes there, with function node, merge nodes, and so on. So we're gonna, I think, make an announcement about that soon as well. So all I can say is you'll hear about it soon.
Awesome. Looking forward to the book, since I already have a sneak peek for the course. Cool. I see there is another question for, can we edit image with n8n? I want to use n8n instead of banner beer for simple adding text to image or adding image over image. So you can do that. So we have an edit image node for that. And internally, we also use it to create some graphics for our social media, so that you can do all this with n8n. So the edit image node is what you are looking for over here. And one more question I see is the recording of the webinar. Where are you going to upload it to watch it? So we are going, okay, I see Max has already answered it. So we are going to upload it on our YouTube channel. And we'll be also sharing it on our Discord as well as on our Twitter whenever it's live on YouTube. So you can always check it out. Awesome. Do we have any other questions, any feedback, or anything that you folks want to talk about? Because I have some interesting questions for you all. All right. In the meantime, you folks are sharing it. I would love to know, since we have released the tags version, since we have released, the ability to add tags to your workflows, what is the maximum number of tags that you have added to a workflow? Okay, I see 3, I see 4, interesting. 5, that's nice. Okay, I am gonna assume that's not true, but maybe for your use case it might be. But if it's true, I would really love to know, which are those 100 tags that you use. Okay, all right. So once again, thank you all for joining in, and I hope you all had a great time. I surely did. We are gonna share this video on YouTube, so we will share that link on Discord as well as on our Twitter, so you can always check, be updated when it's out. And yeah, if you haven't joined our Discord server, I am just sharing the link in the chat. Feel free to join in our Discord server where we can continue a conversation there. Thank you once again, everyone, for joining in, and have a great day.